This spacious 14-foot by 20-foot post and beam barn melds traditional barn architecture with modern building methods. And the result is a large timber frame building that goes up surprisingly fast. The barn features a white pine frame of rough sawn 6 by 6 posts, 6 by 10 beams, and 4 by 8 rafters. The walls are braced with diagonal 4 by 5s, and the window openings are framed with 4 by 4s. However, unlike a traditional post and beam structure, there's no mortise and tenon or scarf joint in the barn. Instead, we assembled the frame with metal fasteners called T-Rex connectors. The T-shaped fasteners were screwed in place and then slid into slots cut into the ends of the posts and beams. Aluminum pins were driven through holes bored in the timbers and fasteners to securely hold the barn frame together. This modern construction method provides a quick and easy way for do-it-yourselfers to build a beautiful post and beam barn. Stage 1. Build the skid frame foundation. Step 1. Set the solid concrete blocks into place, then check them for level. Use a long, straight 2 by 6 to align each row of 5 concrete blocks. Step 2. Make each 20-foot long skid by screwing together 3 pressure-treated 2 by 6s. Drive the 3-inch screws in from both sides of the skid. Step 3. Set the 20-foot long skids into place atop the rows of foundation blocks. Check each skid for level, adjusting the shims if necessary. Stage 2. Build the floor frame. Step 1. Set 2 2 by 6 joists at the far end of the skids, then place another pair in the middle. Cut 2 more joists for the near end of the skids. Step 2. Fasten the 2 by 6 joists to each of the 3 skids with a 3-inch long decking screw down at an angle and into the top of the skid below. Step 3. Hold a 24-inch long support block of pressure-treated 4 by 6 against the inside of the joist. Drive 3-inch screws through the joist and into the block. Step 4. Place another 2 by 6 floor joist against the opposite side of the 4 by 6 block and secure it with 3-inch long galvanized decking screws. Step 5. Slide the remaining 2 by 6 floor joists into place across the skids and between the double pair joists. Space the joist 16 inches on center. Step 6. Adjust the floor joists to extend 2.5 inches past the skids. Fasten each 2 by 6 joist by driving 3-inch screws down at an angle into the skid. Step 7. Nail the 2 by 6 perimeter rim joist to the ends of the floor joists. Be sure to keep the rim joist flush with the top edges of the floor joists. Step 8. Cover the floor frame with 3/4-inch tongue-and-groove plywood. Fasten the plywood down to the joist with 2.5-inch decking screws. Stage 3. Make the post and beam frame. Part 1. Prepare the posts. Step 1. Use a chainsaw attachment on a circular saw to cut 5-inch deep slots into the 6 by 6 posts. The plywood jig ensures straight, accurate cuts. Step 2. Use a router to chamfer the edges of each slot. Trimming the edges to 45 degrees will allow the metal connectors to fit tightly into the slots. Step 3. Slide the wide flange of the T-Rex connector into the slot. Temporarily screw the metal connector to the end of the post. Step 4. To identify the precise position of the metal connector on the 6 by 6 post, draw a line across the edge of the connector and onto the post. Step 5. Mount a hole drilling jig to the post with 2 screws and then drill 2 1/2 inches diameter holes completely through the 6 by 6 post and metal connector. Hold the drill as perfectly vertical as possible. Part 2. Erect the posts. Step 1. Fasten the connectors to the floor deck with 4 4-inch screws. Notice that the metal flange is parallel to the long side of the barn floor. Step 2. After checking the witness marks to ensure the post is aligned properly, lift the post and set it down over the flange of the connector. Step 3. Hammer 1/2 inches diameter aluminum pins through the holes to lock the 6 by 6 post to the connector. Tap the pins flush with the surface of the post. Step 4. Temporarily hold the posts plumb with diagonal 2 by 4 braces. Fasten the braces to the floor frame and posts with 3-inch screws. Part 3. Install the beams. Step 1. Fasten 3 metal connectors, 1 for each post, to the edge of the long 6 by 10 plate beam. Secure each connector with 6 4-inch screws. Step 2. Lift the plate beam above the 3 posts. Lower the beam, guiding the metal connectors into the slots cut in the tops of the posts. Step 3. Lock the 6x10 plate beam to the 6x6 posts by driving two 1/2 inches diameter aluminum pins through the holes at the top of each 6x6 post. Step 4. Screw a 24-inch long temporary 2x6 cleat to the posts and then set a metal T-Rex connector on top of the cleat. Fasten the connector to the 6x10 plate beam with 6 4-inch long structural screws. Step 5. Set the 6x10 crossbeam between the plate beams. Fit the metal connectors into the slots, then rest the crossbeam on the 2x6 cleats. Step 6. Secure each end of the 6x10 crossbeam with 3 aluminum pins, driving the 6-inch long pins flush with the surface of the crossbeam. Step 7. Screw metal connectors to the crossbeams for each of the 3 6x6 joists that will support the floor of the overhead loft. Fasten a temporary 2x4 cleat to the crossbeam directly below each metal connector. Step 8. Lower the 6x6 joist between the crossbeams. Slip the connectors into the slots in the joist ends. Rest the joist onto the cleats and then pin each end. Part 4. Brace the frame. Step 1. Install 4x6 bottom plates between the vertical 6x6 posts. Drive 8-inch screws through the plates and plywood deck and into the joists. Step 2. Fasten diagonal braces at each post to add strength and rigidity to the timber frame. Secure each 4x5 brace with 4 8-inch screws. Step 3. Add 45-degree diagonal braces to the upper wall sections. 2. Align each brace flush with the outside edge of the post and plate beam. Part 5. Frame the windows. Step 1. Use 8-inch screws to fasten a 4x6 nailer to the underside of each 6x10 crossbeam. Hold the nailer flush with the outer surface of the beam. Step 2. Frame the sides of the window openings with 4x6 trimmer studs. Check each 4x6 for plumb with a level before screwing it in place. Step 3. Cut a 4x6 rough sill to fit between the vertical trimmer studs. Then, push the sill down onto two 20-inch tall spacer blocks. Step 4. Drive a 6-inch screw through the outside of the sill and into the trimmer. Move the spacer block and drive 2 screws up from below. Step 5. Saw a 4x6 header to fit between the vertical trimmer studs. Push the header down onto two 25-inch long spacer blocks, then secure with 6-inch screws. Stage 4. Roof framing. Part 1. Set the rafters. Step 1. Use a large portable beam saw or a 12-inch sliding compound miter saw to miter cut the ends of the 4x8 rough sawn roof rafters. Step 2. Hold a roof rafter in place and secure its lower end to the top of the 6x10 plate beam with two 10-inch long structural screws. Step 3. After installing 2 pairs of rafters, slide the 2x10 ridge beam between the rafters. Be sure the ridge is flush with the tops of the rafters, and secure each rafter to the ridge with 2 6-inch screws. Step 4. Create a gable overhang by attaching 4x6 fly rafters to the gable end rafters. Fasten the fly rafters with 10-inch screws spaced 12 inches apart. Step 5. Cut 4x4s to frame the rough opening for the round windows. Check the rough sill with a 24-inch level to make sure it's perfectly level. Step 6. Screw one 4x4 brace into each corner of the rough opening. These diagonal pieces will provide support for fastening the round window. Part 2. Nail down the roof deck. Step 1. Install skip sheathing halfway up the roof, then stop and cover the 1x8s with 1/2 inch plywood. Be sure to nail into the rafters. Step 2. Use roof brackets and a scaffold plank to reach the upper half of the roof. Continue to nail down 1x8s all the way to the roof peak. Step 3. Cut the 1x6 rake board longer than needed, then nail it to the fly rafter. Use a circular saw to trim the rake flush with the fascia board. Step 4. Nail 1x2 trim to the 1x6 rake. This narrow piece of trim isn't required, but it does create an extra shadow line along the gable ends. Part 3. Install the drip cap. Step 1. Set the aluminum drip cap flashing onto the roof edge, positioned so that its wide flange lays flat on the plywood deck. Secure to the roof with 1.5 inch long nails. Step 2. Nail a row of starter shingles along the edge of the roof. Align the top edge of the shingles with the chalk line snapped across the roof. Step 3. Install starter shingles up each end of the roof, making sure they follow the chalk line. Secure each shingle with 1.5-inch roofing nails. Step 4. Using the stair-step method to install roof shingles allows you to complete one section of roofing before moving down to the next. Step 5. To work safely on the upper half of the roof, install metal roofing brackets and a long staging plank. Nail each bracket into a rafter. Step 6. Cover the peak of the roof with overlapping ridge shingles. Be sure to place the nails where they'll be covered by the subsequent shingle. Stage 5. Install vertical board siding. Part 1. Nail siding to the gable ends. Step 1. Start installing siding in the middle of the gable end. Spline the two center boards together so the tongue edges are facing out. Step 2. Snap a chalk line across the jagged ends of the siding. Then screw a long, straight 2x4 fence to the siding, flush on the chalk line. Step 3. Adjust the saw blade to cut 1/18 inches deep, then guide a circular saw along the 2x4 fence to trim the siding to length. Unscrew the 2x4. Part 2. Install the round windows. Step 1. After marking the round window opening onto the gable end, use a jigsaw to cut the 30-inch diameter circle through the 1x8 pine siding. Step 2. Tilt the round window into the opening, then level it. Secure the window by driving 4 2.5-inch screws through its perimeter flange. Part 3. Nail siding to the walls. Step 1. Install 1x8 pine siding across the gable end wall. Slip each piece under the siding above and secure with 2.5 inches long galvanized nails. Step 2. If a siding piece is bowed and you can't tighten the joint, pry it closed using a wood chisel hammered into the timber frame. Step 3. Use a table saw to notch pieces of siding to fit around the rafter tails. It's often necessary to recut the pine siding to obtain a snug fit. Step 4. Stop every now and then and use a long level to check the alignment of the siding pieces above and below the window opening. Step 5. At the end of the window opening, it's necessary to notch the siding to fit around the top, side, and bottom of the rough opening. Step 6. Nail siding right over the transom window opening in the rear wall. Come back later and root out the siding from within the opening. Stage 6. Doors and windows. Part 1. Hang the hinged doors. Step 1. Set the door into the opening in the gable end. Note that the hinges and 2x4 mounting posts are already attached to the door. Step 2. Use a cordless impact driver to drive 6-inch screws through the counterbore holes in the 2x4 mounting post and into the timber frame. Step 3. Apply waterproof glue to 1-inch diameter hardwood plugs. Then press the plugs into the counterbore holes to conceal the screw heads. Part 2. Hang the sliding door. Step 1. Fasten 5 iron standoff brackets to the barn directly over the doorway opening. Mount each bracket with a single screw. Step 2. Attach the horizontal steel track to each standoff bracket with a lag screw. Drive in the lags with a ratcheting socket wrench. Step 3. Slide the barn door onto the tracks. Each roller assembly houses a grooved wheel. Be sure the grooves fit over the top of the track. Step 4. To keep the sliding door from swinging away from the barn, attach a stay roller to the barn near the bottom corner of the door. Step 5. Cover the exposed pressure-treated rim joist in front of the sliding door with a pine board. Attach the board with 2.5-inch galvanized nails. Part 3. Install the transom window. Step 1. Turn on the router and then slowly move it in a clockwise direction to cut through the siding around the window's rough opening. Step 2. Install the PVC windowsill to the bottom of the opening. You could also cut the sill from cedar, redwood, or pressure-treated lumber. Step 3. Set the transom window on top of the PVC windowsill. Press the window flat against the pine siding that protrudes into the opening. Step 4. Hold the transom window in the opening by attaching a stop strip to the header above the sash. Secure the stop with trim head screws. Part 4. Install the barn sash. Step 1. Fasten the sill into the window opening with 2.5-inch trim head screws. The horn on each end of the sill extends 3 inches past the opening. Step 2. After attaching both side casings, install the head casing across the window top where it will protrude 3/4 inches into the opening. Step 3. Install the apron under the windowsill, attaching it with 2.5-inch screws. Conceal all screw heads with white caulk or plastic plugs. Step 4. Mount a stop to each side of the windows. When the sash is open, it'll rest against the wood dowel protruding from the 2x2 cleats. Step 5. Slip the barn sash into place behind the wooden window stops. Install a barrel bolt at the top of the sash to hold the window closed. Stage 7. Finish up the barn. Step 1. Build the loft floor from 1.5 inches thick tongue-and groove pine planks. Use a rubber mallet to pound the planks tightly together. Step 2. Create the look of a traditional rubble rock foundation by dry stacking thin stones around the barn. Set the stones even with the siding. Step 3. Use a paintbrush to apply a semi-transparent stain to the siding. Scrub the stain into the wood to ensure good adhesion and even color. For more detailed shed plans, visit sheddrafts.com.